Hi, my name is Jordan Wirfs-Brock, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my dissertation research, which explores how new interactions with data, sound, and narrative storytelling might help people understand the world around them. And I pursue this question using voice interfaces as sites for creative exploration. My work is all about using data and sound to interrogate ourselves and the world around us. So let's expand on this idea with an example from my own life. So I'm going to be real with you. Working on this dissertation proposal in the COVID-19 era has been a struggle. And I was unloading some of that struggle on a colleague of mine who made the really smart suggestion that I use data and sound to document this process. So we are about to go meta. As I was writing my dissertation proposal, I took some of the things I've been tracking about myself, my own productivity planner, here it is in the flesh, and the data my digital tools have been tracking about me, my Google Docs versioning history, and I turned this data about the month of my life when I was most intensely writing the proposal document into a sound composition. So here's a short excerpt. Let's listen.
Grumpy, urgent, amazing, scattered, anxious, derailed, center of the enemy. Fuck it.
Now, that probably didn't make much sense, and that's okay at this point, because we're going to slow down and unpack what you just heard. The composition has 4 layers of sound. So the first sound layer is a rhythmic beat that represents the day's passing, the relentless march of time toward my deadline. Here I'm engaging sound's rhythmic qualities to establish a temporal reference frame. On top of this rhythm, I added a tone that gets higher and higher as the cumulative page length of my proposal increases. This is using a technique called sonification, which is representing data with sound. Specifically, I used a technique called parameter mapping to map page length onto pitch. Layered on top of that, I represent the number of words I wrote each day on the days that I did write with this mess of random beeps. Again, I'm using parameter mapping sonification here, only this time mapping words written onto the number of beeps and their inverse length. So days with more words have more beeps and they're more densely packed together. So here's a short writing day. And here's a big writing day. That one has all kinds of beeps. It's a bit frenetic, but so is the writing process. Okay, onto the final sound layer. I took the notes scribbled in my planner about how I was feeling, and I picked a representative phrase from each day.
Into a groove, working, productive, distracted.
So those are all of the components, and now we're ready to hear the whole thing together. It's about 45 seconds long. So let's listen.
Grumpy, urgent, amazing, scattered, anxious, derailed, center of the enemy. Fuck it. Energized. Into a groove, working, productive, distracted, power outage. Slow to start. Frazzled, FOMO. Blow up, freak out. Cranky.
Okay, you may not have been able to decode all of the information embedded in this data sound artifact, but I hope maybe you felt something. And I definitely found the act of creating it to be quite cathartic. Through this act of making, I interpreted my lived experience using data and sound as materials. And this was a very personal, autobiographical act of making sense of my world through data and sound. So in my dissertation work, I hope to take this personal practice and turn it into something that other people can use. The composition you just heard, it blended speech and non-speech sounds, not just in the composition itself, but also in how I used my spoken narration to scaffold what it meant, providing important narrative context. Traditionally, sonification designers have focused on non-speech sounds, the bleeps and the bloops, and have largely ignored the context in which sonifications are delivered. Now, I think this is strange. Imagine if visualization designers did the same thing. Graphics would look like this. It's still kind of pretty, but what does it even mean? Any guesses? If I were to slowly reveal some of these scaffolding annotations, it becomes much easier for you to understand what this visualization is all about. And yet, this covered up version without annotation, that's how sonifications are often presented to listeners. My proposal writing composition included both the sounds I played and also the narration I used to step you through what it meant. My speech, my words were essential. They formed the connective tissue, an annotation layer that helped you make sense of it. And it's this connective tissue, the mingling of data, sound, and narrative, that my dissertation will focus on. Excuse me.